We got a great one for you today. We have one of the hottest artists out right now in comics. DC, Marvel, boom, it doesn't matter. You've heard of this guy. You love this guy. Our own David Nakayama.
Hello.
David.
How's it going, everybody?
Thank you so much for doing this, and welcome. What got you into comic book art?
It all happened simultaneously, so it's a story I tell fairly frequently, but I don't know if you're probably about the same age as me, and in the early 90s, like, everyone was buying comics. It was really hot. Yeah. And so, like, the two neighborhood boys that were living right next to me, they both collected comics. They had Jim Lee Uncanny X-Men, and I was just an artistic kid. And I saw that, I was like, whoa, where has this been all my life? And simultaneously decided that I wanted to be Jim Lee when I grew up. And, you know, not just that I wanted to be an artist, but also I was collecting comics. So everything changed for me. I still collect comics to this day. Still want to be Jim Lee when I grew up. But that was like a pivotal day when I decided that.
I can't think of any that you haven't drawn. But do you know what your favorite one is? Or can you even, like, give me a top 3?
Favorite character across all of comics? That's so hard. When I got into comics, I went to the comic book store. I bought Superman and I bought X-Men, like from day one. I love comics. I don't really care who's publishing them. So that was never a thing for me. I just wanted to be, work someday for DC, for Marvel, and thank goodness that has come true. Like, the longer my career goes on, the more it's important to me that the things I'm drawing are things that I personally like and have nostalgia for. So, recently, I got to draw some Thundercats covers, right? Because I loved that show when I was a kid. Or G.I. Joe, same reason. But when people ask me to draw something, that's newer, and I didn't grow up with it, then that's probably a no, because the schedule's busy, so I have to make some tough decisions, and it always comes down to, do I like that thing personally? But you want a real answer. What I have found recently is, like, I would always say, like, it's probably X-Men because of the Jim Lee thing that we talked about. Like, that's what got me in the door. That always has a special place in my heart. And then if I had to narrow it down to one X person, I do find myself drawing Rogue the most. So that maybe subconsciously that says something about how much I like her.
Usually, how long in advance do you do a cover before you actually see it released?
I think it's generally 3 months, just because of the way that the printing schedule happens.
Okay.
So you guys know there are those catalogs that come out, like, physically in stores about 3 months before that comic is in stores. So they need the covers done ahead of that. So I guess, like, maybe 4 months, ahead of schedule maybe is the ideal time for me to make art. Then they have the months to put in the catalog, and then the catalog shows up, and 3 months later the actual book shows up. One thing I really like about comics from an artist's point of view is that if I make something, oftentimes within a couple of days of making it, it's revealed, and I get to share it, and we get to talk about it, and that's really satisfying as an artist. Like, that's what we do this for. It's like, making art is similar to, like, a magician or a musician on stage, like, performing. It's a performance, right? We do Absolutely. This thing, and we want to share it with the audience.
Can you think of, like, a certain moment that really hit you, that, like, wow, people are enjoying my work, people are seeing my work?
I didn't get that feeling up until, like, I'm 46, and I've been doing this since my 20s, and I didn't feel like I was, like, even legit, even a little bit, until, like, a few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, and I just felt like an imposter, up until 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know what exactly shifted. It probably had to do when I started getting together with Unknown Comic Books, and then we were doing the exclusives and really working on a lot of, I felt like, higher profile projects, and then that started, that I think that triggered an opportunity to work with DC and others, and at some point around there, I started feeling like, hey, this is great. I get to do so many of the things that I've always wanted to do. But until then, I never felt that.
How often are you still using physical implements as opposed to, like, a software to draw?
If I was smart, I would do all of my covers by hand and then sell the originals, because the originals are worth 10 times more. Get really excited about offers for things I've always wanted to draw, and I say yes to a lot of stuff, and then I find that I have very little time, and so I need to compromise in the sense that I draw it digitally, which is faster.
Yep.
So I get more covers done, But the compromise I've made is that I have to use Photoshop, to paint rather than get in there by hand. I love drawing by hand. I would make a lot more money by hand, but I didn't get into this to become rich. I did it because I love the characters and I wanted to draw. And so for now, at least, I lean toward do more covers because I love all of them, and I don't know if I'm going to get that chance again, so I have to say yes, right?
On any given week, how many covers or how many concepts do you work on in a given week?
It really varies. Some covers can be done, in as little as a day. That's my record. But some covers can take a week or more. And it often depends on, how many characters are in it, how complicated the outfits are, does it have a lot of realistic rendering and lighting and backgrounds, and all that stuff contributes to it.
How much thought and process do you put into the backgrounds of those? Because I know, like, with this one, if looking at it just, at first glance, it's the skyline. Is it a specific skyline? How did that go?
For me, it's funny. When I was in video games, I was an art director, and I noticed that some artists really liked to and were best at drawing characters, and other artists were really into drawing environments and were best at that. And we literally, in the industry, made a firm line between an environment concept artist and a character concept artist, because they are not the same thing. And I realized about myself that I'm definitely a character guy. I care about characters 1,000 times more than the environments. Environments are important, but at the end of the day, these are stories about people, and people's faces and their expression, that matters to me most of all. You can have a cover that's a close up on a face, and that's enough, because that's all that's really necessary, is like the story that's being told in the face. So you'll see more, city skylines and city streets in my spider covers than probably most other characters for that reason. It's less important with other characters, like Wonder Woman covers, and 3 in a row did not really need a big background. Yeah, I have so much respect for the artists that can do both very well.
Mm-hmm.
In my head, I really do make a distinction between a character specialist and a background specialist.
Mm-hmm.
But Jim Lee is one of those guys who does both really well. Did you ever watch those how to draw videos that Jim did in the 90s?
That Jim did, that Claremont did, everybody. Yeah.
Like comic book greats or something like that.
Yeah.
Jim once explained, how to create action in poses, and how he's basically being an actor in his head when he does all these things. And you can totally see that, his characters feel real because they have all these little nuanced emotive touches in their body language and in their faces. Nobody does that better than him. They asked me, the publishers are like, who do you want to write the foreword? And I was like, I hadn't even thought about that. But the moment they said it, I was like, Jim, I know we've talked a lot about Jim Lee, but if you look at my stuff, you can tell that I am also a huge J. Scott Campbell fan.
Yes, you are.
He, I think, is, there's more fun and color and enjoyment in his covers than anyone I had ever seen. So Jim Lee was like my gateway drug, and then I discovered Adam Hughes, and I discovered J. Scott, and ever since then, I was trying to learn from all of them. So when they asked me that, J. Scott's name popped in my head right away. He's my guy. He's the guy I still collect to this day. He agreed, first of all, which blew my freaking brain. It's hard to explain how big that was for me. It's like him saying yes to doing the forward was probably a bigger deal to me than the book itself, if that makes any sense.
No, totally.
Anyway, he said he did it because one time Arthur Adams had asked, or he had once asked Arthur Adams to do a foreword for his book. And I thought that was so cool, and that he was paying it forward. So maybe someday some young hot upstart guy or person will ask me to do that, and wouldn't that be an honor?
I love your work, and thank you so much for your time. Seriously.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, and look forward to talking again.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thank you.